So we decided to integrate PebblePad into our certificate in university teaching program, which is our advanced certificate, and we call it our Cut Reflective Teaching Journal. And so just to give you a little bit of an overview of the program, I know Tim's involved in aspects of it, so Tim, apologies if this is redundant for you, but for those of you who aren't familiar, it's an advanced teaching certificate for PhD students. And the overall goal is to be a self-aware, critically reflective teacher who has gained both theoretical knowledge and skills that contribute to success in an academic career. And so you can already see self-aware and critically reflective are right in our overall goal. So Catherine maybe gave us a little bit of a nudge that this might fit well with PebblePad. And so CUT consists of 3 graduate level courses, GS 901, 902, and 903. In 901, we focus on workshops and reflection papers. 902 consists of participants doing a research project on teaching and learning and then putting together a teaching dossier, which is a key document for academic applications, but also a way for them to reflect on their teaching and make a portfolio about their teaching. And then 903 is a teaching practicum where we come in and observe them twice teaching in undergraduate courses or graduate courses. And so that's kind of a high level overview of the program. So why did we integrate PebblePad into CUT? One of the really important things for us, and one of the logistically valuable aspects, was that students have access to all of their reflections throughout the CUT program as well as after they graduate. So CUT has 3 different learn courses, one for each of those GS courses that I described previously. And so they don't necessarily make the connections between the 3 courses, and they lose access to learn after they finish the course. So we often had students saying, I don't have my response papers from the first course, they're in the Dropbox, can I access them? Or I don't have access to my response papers or my observation reports from GS 903, how do I get them? And so it was a way for us to ensure that they could have access to the work that they do throughout the program at all times. But then a really great aspect of PebblePad is that they can continue to have access to PebblePad after they graduate. And so they can access all of this reflective work that they do once they're done the program, which is really important for people who are applying to jobs after their graduation. And when they go, oh, right, I wrote something about teaching, but now this actually might be useful for my academic application. And so having that access is really important. And again, similarly, it's allowing them to have all of their reflections and all of their teaching artifacts in one place, because the program builds to the capstone of creating that teaching dossier. This, by integrating PebblePad, it allows us to help them collect those artifacts along the way so that they don't have to kind of do all of that collection and tracking down of key documents at the end of the program. They've kind of build that up along the way. So for us, we have both assessed and unassessed components in PebblePad for the CUT program. So there are a couple of things in GS 901 and GS 903 that are assessed by CTE staff. And then there are some components that we've built in that help students along their learning journey, but we don't assess them. So they're kind of optional reflections that prepare students to get to the next component or reflect after a key component of the program, but we don't actually go in and give them marks or look at it. So for the assessed components in GS 901, there are 4 workshop response papers that they they write, and before those were done via the Dropbox. So now they upload their response papers in PebblePad, and we give them feedback in PebblePad. So they have both access to the response paper as well as our feedback after they complete the course. And then the GS 903, which is the teaching practicum, the observations in the classroom. We do both their pre-observation forms as well as their observation response papers in PebblePad. So for the unassessed, there's a variety of things. You can see the start of cut reflection and the end of cut reflection. And then we have a couple of post reflections after the first course to kind of help them think about what they learned in GS 901 as they prepare for GS 902, the second course, and think about what they might want to do a teaching and learning research project on. They also do a reflection after their research project to think about what they've learned, how it might impact their teaching, and what they might want to do moving forward. And then as they build the teaching dossier, that reflective portfolio, we have reflective activities in PebblePad that they can work through as they go to build that portfolio. So one of the really key things that we integrated when we were thinking about bringing PebblePad in is trying to orient students to PebblePad because they are grad students, PhD candidates specifically, that haven't necessarily used it in other aspects of their academic careers. And so we wanted to kind of guide them through this process and make sure that they had the resources they needed so that they could use the tool effectively. So one of the things that we did is they now apply to the certificate in university teaching program through PebblePad. So it kind of gives them that orientation to the tool so that it doesn't come as a surprise when they start the course itself. We also include an introduction to PebblePad in the cut orientation materials. So we give them an overview of why we're using the tool, how it's been integrated into the program, and then have them go in and do some orientation activities so that, again, they're using the tool before they actually have to submit something for assessment. And then at the end of each workshop in GS 901, we have information on how to access PebblePad and submission information, both in text form as well as in video form, so that they know how to submit those response papers and feel comfortable doing so. And I'll share those in Learn in a bit. But I think that one of the things that is really key to think through, and Catherine has a lot of really great resources, but it does take some adapting to make sure it fits your user needs. Thinking through how am I going to guide students through, or participants through, what they need to do to use PebblePad effectively. So I will go in and show you our 4 workbooks that are associated with the Certificate in University Teaching program. So as I said, we have them apply to cut through PebblePad. It's its own workbook. And then once they get into the program and once they register in GS 901, they get access to the GS 901 Learn course, and therefore the PebblePad associated with GS 901. And then we have a separate one for 902 and 903 as well. The reason for doing that, you may say, why didn't you just put it all in one? We had intended to put it all in one, and we were planning to do so until we started thinking about if we ever wanted to make changes, it would cause us to, if we made one change in one course or one aspect of a page, it would make us have to redo the whole book. And because of the nature of our program, some participants will take 4 or 5 terms to complete cut. Some might take their entire PhD or their entire grad studies, which could be, 16, 20 terms, depending on the person. So one of the things that we wanted to think about was, okay, at least if we need to make a change, we're making it for a given cohort as they enter the program, and we're not impacting those that are already in the program in a PebblePad workbook. So that's just something to think about if you're looking at a program that has multiple components and that participants are in for a longer period of time, or it's not a cohort-based model where they're moving through the workbook at the same pace. One thing that Catherine did recommend we do, though, in order to allow participants to see all of their workbooks at once in PebblePad and have access to them is put a shared tag, the Certificate in University Teaching tag there that allows them to access all of their workbooks in one place in PebblePad so that they can find what they've already done in a previous course. So I will stop presenting my PowerPoint and we'll share the browser. So one of the things that is a little bit tricky because they are all linked to separate Learn courses. I do have to kind of go in and go back and forth, but I will start off with GS 901, which is the main course that we use PebblePad for, and where students are oriented to PebblePad. So on our Learn page, we go over here to the course content widget. They click on PebblePad, the Cut Reflected Teaching Journal, and we have a whole page here on accessing and using your Cut Reflected Teaching Journal. So it explains kind of the purpose of it. We walk them through how they find things, how to auto-submit so that we can see different aspects of the workbook as they progress it in case they don't submit an assignment properly. And so they click on this link here, and it takes them to the PebblePad workbook. So this is our home page for the Cut Reflected Teaching Journal, which is the name of the PebblePad workbook that we have integrated. And this just kind of gives them an overview of why we're using this tool, what reflective teaching is, and why it's important so that they understand why they're doing this. So we also have a page here on tips for using it that explains that they get access to PebblePad after, and they can see it after they graduate. So this is one of the optional activities that we have in the 901 workbook. As you can see, it clearly says this activity will not be assessed by CTE. And so again, it says these questions are meant for you to reflect on personally for your own growth. And so they're really prompts to help them think through why they want to be in this program, what are they trying to get out of it, so that they're primed to really engage with the learning once they start the program. We also do a couple of questions to help them think about what artifacts they have that they could use in their teaching dossier. And then we have an add button here where they can upload things that they already have that they might be interested in using later on in the program. Again, trying to get them to make those collections ahead of time instead of waiting till the capstone to try and find everything that they have. So then for 901 itself, we have the four workshops that have response papers that are assessed. So for each of these, we have the prompt that they're going to respond to. We have them upload the document because it's a 2 to 3 page reflection. So that's just, I guess, the easiest way for both us and them. But PebblePad has many ways that you can have them fill in questions. So this is just something that we've decided to do. So it tells them, the requirements, and then we had specific instructions about how they go about uploading and submitting the file. And that is because it is a 2-step process. So we wanted to make sure it was clear. That being said, the first time they do it, we do have to usually do some coaching to help people. And so each of these pages has a very similar format, just really the prompt itself is the thing that changes. And so it's pretty user intuitive in terms of showing them where they need to upload the file. The other thing that I mentioned earlier was the tag that brings all of the different pieces of the cut PebblePad workbooks together. Now I am in test student mode, so unfortunately they're linked to a specific test student, but what the students who travel through the program, when they come into a given PebblePad workbook, they would be able to see all of the workbooks related to cut that they have participated in. So this would include their cut application, and if they get to the end of the course, it would also have GS 901, GS 902, and GS 903. And then they can click on that and access the workbooks for the other pieces of the course. The other thing that I'll point out is for each of the response papers, we have a link that says submit via PebblePad. They go in here, and again, we've given specific instructions again about how to access your PebblePad teaching journal, how to auto submit, and how to access the page for this specific response paper, how to upload. So again, I'm talking about this like two-step process of like they upload the file and then they submit the assignment. And then how to confirm that it actually went through, which is important for first-time users. And then also guidance on how to view the instructor feedbacks. So when that comes, so that they know where to find it. And you can see that we have videos here for these pieces as well, just for those who don't like to read text or look at screenshots. So that is an overview of the GS 901 journal.
Thanks, Catherine. I think for us, the best way to do this is really to talk about our journey to where we are today with PebblePad. And I think it's great to hear that there are so many individuals here today that are exposing themselves for the first time to PebblePad, because when I think about our journey, it wasn't that long ago. We knew PebblePad existed, but we didn't have the people power at the time to begin to think about how we might be able to benefit from this content management system e-portfolio tool, while we were also thrusted to figure out how to shift all our workshops virtually and figure out teams and use different other tools and technologies. And so PebblePad was something that we did have to put on the back burner for a period of time. But the journey of our story really began last fall. And so when we heard in the spring term that there was this call back to campus, initially we were getting tapped by many different managers and leaders and senior leaders on campus, asking us to engage and figure out how we can support managers and leaders with this call back to campus. And so we held a number of focus groups with managers and leaders, asking them, as you think about this return to campus, what comes to mind? And what we heard loud and clear was, before we could talk about workforce planning, before we can talk about, actually physically being here on campus, a lot of managers and leaders were saying, we understand how to do work virtually now, and we remember how to do work in person, but none of us have the skills and abilities to figure out how to effectively lead hybrid teams, because we know this is what we're going to be returning to with the staggered return that we were experiencing for this first call back to campus last spring term. And so when we asked them then, okay, so from a training and development standpoint, what do you need and what do you expect from organizational human development? The second thing we heard was, we're all very busy and we don't have time to attend, half-day training sessions on how to lead hybrid teams. We need this in real time when we need it. We need it to be, as quickly provided to us as possible, but also the ability to kind of lean into our own learning. And so giving us additional resources or allowing us to do some exploration through a tool would be very helpful. And so this gave us the ability to start thinking outside the box beyond what we were used to doing and what we normally did. And so we knew one thing was our solution had to be agile. It had to be self-directed. We needed resources that were able to be provided to our staff members and our employees that could grow as the university kind of grew their understanding of hybrid work. And we needed it to be focused more around that micro-learning approach. And so we did a reach out to Catherine and Natalie early in the fall term to say, hey, we think PebblePad might be that solution for us. Can you tell us a little bit more about this system and how we could potentially create micro-learning series around leading and working hybrid teams for managers. And so we started that process, I think, mid-fall. And I just dropped the link in the chat there. And so that's the link to the micro-learning course. Where we are today is we have 11 micro-learning modules. And again, I'm going to place those topics in the chat as well, where managers and leaders can sign up for this micro-learning series at any time, can engage with it at any time, and can return to it at any time. And the other beauty of this is, as we continue to grow this hybrid micro-learning module, we're able to adapt the modules that are already in existence as new information comes to light, as new material might need to morph and change. It's very easy for us to not only engage with past participants, but also keep new participants engaged in the same way. And so that's what really brought us to PebblePad. And seeing that we had one idea in terms of a micro-learning approach that was completely asynchronous, and we weren't necessarily at the time thinking about how can we use this for our synchronous sessions or our live sessions. We're now at the point where we're using PebblePad as our content management system for one of our leadership programs. So our Leadership Essentials program, all of our participants engage with PebblePad as part of the blending learning experience. And so we have 3 workbooks already built for our current participants in the current cohort of Leadership Essentials. And then we have the Leading and Working in Hybrid Teams workbook, which Chun will have the opportunity to talk about some of the wonderful work that he's been able to engage with as he learns and we learn this new system. And so Chun, at this time, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, John. So basically what today I'm going to be sharing is our OHD's journey to using PebblePad. Just quick question, does anybody have trouble hearing me, or is this fine? No, okay, so let me share my screen quickly. So this is actually the very first workbook that the OHD has been using as the leading and working in hybrid teams. And this is the ones that we have been developed initially. So does anybody, can everybody see this okay? Yeah, so basically what we try to do in this workbook is that we try to introduce different topics for leading and working in hybrid teams in different little micro-learning modules. And then in each of the micro-learning module, we try to get the participant thinking of the topic with a micro-learning video, as well as a lot of reflective questions that they can consider when they're considering these different topics. And this is because this is our own first, our development of the different PebblePad has been coming through quite a bit since this very first workbook that we have developed. And so because once I was hired by the OHD, I was actually put into the position where I have to actually try to make everybody understand how PebblePad actually can help benefit the OHD program. And because of that, I've actually developed a guide to show everybody in OHD how we can incorporate different technologies. Because while the PebblePad is a very good learning platform, we do acknowledge there's a couple limitations with the PebblePad itself, namely that it's not able to actually give us a lot of the things that we wanted to do. And also we wanted to be able to make PebblePad even more engaging. But one of the things that we find is that participant has a little bit of the trouble understanding how the PebblePad can benefit them. And so OHD ourselves have developed our own PebblePad guide. Instead of sending people to the PebblePad help page, we develop our own video on showing the participant how PebblePad actually works, as well as how to use PebblePad to get everyone familiar themselves with the interface in the PebblePad. And this is a continuous process that we're developing, because since this one was developed, we've also incorporated new elements into trying to let the participant, showing them how to upload files and everything in the PebblePad. And we actually continuously develop our guides in accordance with what we're actually trying to let the participants achieve, and trying to get, so we do this step by step, so they're actually become more and more familiar with the platform itself, instead of just throwing them the PebblePad workbook and then here's all the things you can do. It can become quite overwhelming. So this is how we're trying to engage them with. And This, like I mentioned previously, this is actually a workbook that I developed not for any of the courses, but actually for within the OHD department itself to show how our instructional design specialists can actually utilize this platform in delivering their content. So I try to show them that I think many of you are familiar with some web pages, especially on tech websites. You can read out a page. We've introduced such element in this introductory page. We've tried to show them that you can use plugin to show participants, especially when we hold events, we can show them where to go with the maps. And in the different modules, what I do quite extensively is using the H5P packages. So they're the HTML5 packages that you can do through eLearning Ontario to design different type of learning elements. And one thing that we always do in the OHD workshop is try to get a participant engaged with Word Cloud. And then we thought about why don't we try to incorporate Word Cloud themselves into the workbooks so to get participants participate together while within the workbook themselves, which kind of overcomes all the limitations of being the workbook as people working on their own. So we've also used PebblePad to actually, because we have a lot of the video resource and links, we try to use PebblePad to actually be able to show, to control like the video playbacks, because this is something that HTML5 can have, as well as incorporating interactive slides into the workbook so that people can go through. So this is just one example, because since I've developed this demo workbook, I've actually incorporated all these elements into our current HOHT offering in their workbooks. So this is just to show everyone that how we're using it. So sometimes when we're presenting a large number of videos, what happens is that we don't want everything to crowd it on a page. So we actually do like a book format where people can go through them quite easily. So it makes information that we find like much more digestible. And then, so it doesn't really like, I know those, it doesn't look like it's a ton of information on the same page. And we always try to give the participant a checklist at the end for them to check off the things they've done. And one thing we try to keep consistent is in the more recent offering is that we have a more consistent style that's more in line with the University of Waterloo's design guide. And one thing that we really like about PebblePad is sometimes you can add things to the participants. You can give them extra, like you can release pages after the workshop is done. Because one thing that we always do is that we send people information through email. And then what we find is if we were to incorporate the information in the PebblePad, we can actually show them these pages after and send them extra information once the workshop is completed. And then we also have design reasons, like I've shown in the PebblePad, I have one guide that's designed for uploading, because in one of the OHD workshop, there are several personal assessments. And now we're letting the participant have the ability to upload their personal assessments within PebblePad so they can keep with them continuously. So we try to keep as much of our information in the PebblePad as possible instead of learn, because we want to give the participants just one place that they need to go instead of hopping between two places. And that's my brief introduction to the PebblePad.